Good evening. You are watching World News. I am Pankaj Mishra. The tensions are rising once again in the Middle East with military signaling, nuclear concerns, and regional alliances all moving at the same time. From Washington's naval deployment to Tehran's warnings, and from satellite intelligence to political unrest in Turkey, the geopolitical temperature is indeed rising. We begin with Iran's warning to the United States amid fragile nuclear negotiations. Iran has issued a strong warning to the United States saying that if US sends a second aircraft carrier strike group to the Middle East, Tehran will see it as a direct step towards war. According to the regional sources aligned with Iranian media, additional US military pressure during ongoing nuclear negotiations would signal what Tehran calls, quote-unquote, insincerity and false intentions, potentially undermining diplomacy rather than supporting it. Let's take a closer look.
Iran has issued a strong warning, saying that if the United States sends a second aircraft carrier strike group to the Middle East, Tehran will see it as a direct step toward war. According to regional sources aligned with Iranian media, additional U.S. military pressure during ongoing nuclear negotiations would signal insincerity and false intentions, potentially undermining diplomacy rather than supporting it. This warning circulated widely on social platforms around February 11th and 12th, 2026, reflecting deep Iranian concern about U.S. buildup near its borders, even though it has not yet been released as an official statement by Tehran's foreign ministry or military leadership. Meanwhile, the United States has already positioned the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier strike group in the Arabian Sea near Iran, part of a broader military posture aimed at deterring aggression and backing Washington's negotiating stance. The U.S. Pentagon is now preparing a second aircraft carrier strike group for possible deployment to the region, with the USS George H.W. Bush among the likely candidates. Officials say the deployment could happen within weeks if the president gives the go-ahead, though no formal order has yet been issued. If it proceeds, this would mark the first time in nearly a year that two U.S. carriers operate together in the Middle East, significantly enhancing American naval firepower and strategic options. President Donald Trump has publicly linked the possibility of a second carrier deployment to the fate of the nuclear talks. In television interviews, he said he is thinking about sending another strike group to increase leverage, while warning that if negotiations fail, the United States may have to take very tough actions, including possible military measures. Trump has emphasized that the goal remains a diplomatic deal, but that the U.S. is prepared to act if talks collapse. Diplomacy continues in parallel. Indirect talks between U.S. and Iranian representatives took place recently in Muscat, Oman, with both sides describing the discussions as cautious but productive. Iran has insisted that negotiations focus mainly on its nuclear program and reject broader demands, such as limits on ballistic missiles. This fundamental disagreement, combined with the military buildup on both sides, has kept tensions high and raised fears that missteps could spark a wider conflict. As of mid-February 2026, no second aircraft carrier has yet sailed to the Middle East, but the Pentagon remains on heightened alert, preparing forces and equipment amid competing pressures, military readiness on one hand and diplomacy on the other. With both sides watching closely, the risk of escalation or a breakthrough deal hangs in the balance.
And lo and behold, the United States appears to be preparing exactly the move that Iran fears. The Pentagon has reportedly instructed a second aircraft carrier strike group to prepare for deployment to the Middle East as President Donald Trump increases military pressure on Tehran amid stalled nuclear negotiations. The USS George H.W. Bush Carrier Strike Group, one of the U.S. Navy's most powerful formations, is expected to move toward the region, significantly increasing American naval presence and combat capability. Here's the report.
The drums of war are beating louder in the Middle East after positioning the USS Abraham Lincoln within potential strike range of Iran. President Donald Trump is now weighing the deployment of a second aircraft carrier, a move that would dramatically escalate America's military posture in the region. Reports suggest the USS George H.W. Bush could receive deployment orders within hours. Though the command has not yet been issued, Pentagon officials are said to be preparing for rapid action, signaling that Washington wants maximum leverage as tensions with Tehran intensify. Meanwhile, America's air power is also surging forward. B-52 Stratofortress bombers, capable of carrying bunker-busting bombs, cruise missiles, and even nuclear payloads, have landed at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. These long-range strike aircraft are designed for precision operations against hardened targets. Their arrival follows weeks of naval buildup, including destroyers escorting the USS Abraham Lincoln. Satellite imagery has also revealed Patriot air defense batteries deployed in Jordan, reinforcing U.S. positions across the region. Adding to the escalation, F-35A stealth fighters from the Vermont Air National Guard have begun deploying from RAF Lakenheath in the UK to Jordan's Muwafaq Salti Air Base. The advanced jets, capable of penetrating sophisticated air defenses, expand Washington's operational reach. Together with carrier-based aircraft and heavy bombers, the U.S. now has layered air defenses, strike platforms, and naval power edging closer to Iran's coastline, forming what analysts describe as a credible and immediate strike package. Yet amid the show of force, President Trump continues to speak of diplomacy. "We can make a great deal with Iran," he said, while warning that Tehran miscalculated the last time and paid the price during strikes on its nuclear facilities. The message is twofold. Negotiations remain open, but the military option is real and rapidly assembling. With two carrier groups potentially converging and strategic bombers in place, the question now is whether this buildup is leverage for a deal or preparation for a confrontation that could reshape the region.
New satellite imagery is now raising concerns about activity at one of Iran's key nuclear facilities. There have been claims that have emerged saying that the entrance to Iran's nuclear site in Isfahan is believed to house uranium enrichment equipment has been covered with soil. The U.S. think tank Institute for Science and International Security released satellite images showing multiple underground facility entrances sealed with no visible vehicle movement nearby. Analysts say the move could indicate defensive preparation or concealment of sensitive infrastructure. This report explains more.
Iran has done something unexpected. It has buried the entrances to parts of its nuclear facility with dirt. Not concrete walls, not steel blast doors, dirt. But this simple move could make bombing and even special forces raids significantly harder. So what is Tehran preparing for? And is this a response to growing U.S. pressure? Let's break it down. New high-resolution satellite images show that Iran has completely sealed the tunnel entrances at its underground complex inside the Isfahan Nuclear Technology Center. According to an analysis released this week, the entrances are now fully backfilled with large amounts of soil and earth. They're no longer even recognizable. The northern, middle, and southern tunnel access points all covered, access blocked, on purpose. Why use dirt? It may sound low-tech, but it's actually strategic. Adding thick layers of earth over tunnel entrances can absorb and disperse shockwaves from bunker-busting bombs, reduce direct blast penetration, complicate precision targeting. In simple terms, it makes airstrikes less effective. And there's another reason. Burying entrances doesn't just protect against bombs, it also complicates infiltration. If special forces were ever tasked with entering the site, they wouldn't find open tunnel doors, they'd find tons of compacted soil. That means heavy excavation equipment and far greater risk of detection. It turns a fast, covert operation into a slow, highly visible one. Has Iran done this before? Yes. Similar measures were observed during previous escalations, including during the 2025 Israel-Iran conflict and follow-up U.S. operations. Sites like Natanz and Fordo saw comparable defensive preparations. So this isn't random, it's a pattern. Iran appears to be preparing for the possibility of renewed strikes. So why now? Timing is critical. The U.S. has increased its military presence in the region. Carrier strike groups have been repositioned. Missile defense systems have been deployed. Diplomatic tensions over Iran's nuclear program remain high. Israel continues to signal it will not tolerate nuclear advancement. So the big question is Iran reacting to credible intelligence or simply preparing for worst-case scenarios? What's inside Isfahan? The Isfahan complex is believed to house sensitive nuclear materials, possibly enriched uranium stockpiles that survived earlier attacks. Access for international inspectors has been limited, which only adds to speculation. While the soil barrier is reversible, bulldozers could clear it if needed. The message is clear. Tehran is taking the threat seriously. So what does this really mean? Is this a defensive precaution in a tense region, or a signal that Iran expects military action? By burying its own nuclear entrances, Iran has made bombing harder and infiltration far more complicated.
Regional tensions are also playing out diplomatically. Hamas and Iran have coordinated positions on Gaza and broader regional escalation during talks in Doha. The Palestinian group reaffirmed commitment to the October 10 ceasefire despite continued Israeli violations, as claimed, while Iran reiterated its political support for the Palestinian cause. The Al-Qassam brigades warned that any attack on Iran could trigger a wider confrontation across the region, as Israeli analysts caution that Gaza's humanitarian crisis could fuel renewed militant recruitment. More in this report.
A fiery warning from Iran's resistance allies. Any strike on Tehran will be treated as an attack on the entire Islamic world. The Al-Qassam brigades, the armed wing of Hamas, declared that aggression against Iran would cross a red line far beyond one nation's borders. In a statement marking the 47th anniversary of Iran's Islamic Revolution, spokesperson Abu Obidah pledged full solidarity with Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and the Iranian people, framing any U.S. or Israeli action as a criminal infringement on a sovereign Islamic state. The message was unmistakable: strike Iran, and the backlash will not be contained. Abu Obidah condemned what he called brute force and interference in Iran's domestic affairs, accusing Washington and Tel Aviv of seeking revenge against a nation that has supported Palestinian resistance. The rhetoric signals a widening front, transforming a potential U.S.-Iran confrontation into a broader ideological battle. Hamas leaders reinforced that alignment during a high-level meeting in Doha with Ali Larijani, secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council. According to Hamas, the talks focused on Gaza and regional escalation, underscoring Tehran's central role in the axis of resistance, stretching from Lebanon to Yemen. Meanwhile, in Washington, President Donald Trump is balancing diplomacy with unmistakable threats. After a 3-hour meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on February 11th, Trump insisted negotiations with Iran must continue, but warned that if no deal is reached, the United States would consider something very tough like last time. That reference to previous strikes has raised alarm across the region. Trump has spoken of a great deal with Tehran, yet he has also confirmed additional U.S. military assets are moving closer to Iranian waters. Netanyahu, meeting Trump for the 7th time since the president returned to office, emphasized Israel's security concerns. His office confirmed close coordination with Washington on Iran and Gaza, but offered few details.
U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance reinforced the warning, stating there is another option on the table if Tehran refuses to curb its nuclear ambitions. Iran has signaled willingness to discuss limits on its nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief, but it has drawn a firm line around its ballistic missile program, calling it non-negotiable. As the Middle East sits on edge, on one side, Washington and Jerusalem warn of force if talks fail. On the other, Iran's resistance allies declare that any strike on Tehran would ignite a broader confrontation. With Gaza still burning and U.S. naval power building in the region, the stakes have never been higher. Diplomacy remains alive, but so does the threat of escalation that could draw multiple fronts into a single, dangerous conflict.
And in Turkey, political tensions spilled into parliament. A heated confrontation broke out after lawmakers from the ruling party and the opposition clashed over the appointment of a new justice minister. Opposition members attempted to block Akin Gürlek, appointed by President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, from taking his oath of office, accusing him of political bias. The scuffle forced a temporary suspension of the parliamentary session, highlighting deepening political divisions in the country. Take a look.
A heated confrontation erupted in Turkey's parliament on Wednesday. Lawmakers from the ruling party and the opposition clashed violently over the appointment of a new justice minister, forcing a temporary suspension of the session. The scuffle began as opposition legislators tried to stop Akin Gürlek, recently appointed by President Recep Erdogan, from taking his oath of office following a sweeping cabinet reshuffle. Gürlek's nomination to the powerful Justice Ministry has sparked fierce criticism, with opposition parties accusing him of political bias. Footage from the chamber shows a chaotic scene, lawmakers pushing and shoving, some even throwing punches as tensions boiled over into violence. Opposition members had gathered near the podium to block Gürlek from proceeding with his swearing in. In response, members of Erdogan's AK party moved in to shield him, and the parliamentary speaker was forced to suspend proceedings for 15 minutes to restore order. After the break, Gürlek finally took his oath, surrounded by ruling party lawmakers. Gürlek previously served as Istanbul's chief public prosecutor, overseeing several high-profile cases involving members of the main opposition, the Republican People's Party, or CHP. Opposition leaders have long accused him of pursuing politically motivated prosecutions aimed at weakening government critics. They argue his elevation to justice minister threatens judicial independence, raising serious concerns about the future of the rule of law in Turkey. The confrontation comes amid a broader cabinet reshuffle, which also saw Mustafa Çiftçi, governor of Erzurum, appointed as interior minister. This reshuffle takes place against the backdrop of a sweeping anti-corruption campaign targeting municipalities run by opposition parties. Hundreds of CHP-affiliated officials have been arrested in recent years. Among the most prominent figures caught up in these investigations is Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu, widely viewed as Erdogan's main political rival. He was arrested last year on corruption and organized crime allegations. In November, Gürlek filed a broad indictment against İmamoğlu, accusing him of 142 separate offenses and seeking a combined prison sentence of over 2,000 years. The move drew widespread criticism both inside Turkey and abroad. This brawl in parliament is more than a physical clash. It reflects deeper political tensions and raises urgent questions about the future of judicial independence, democratic accountability, and the rule of law in Turkey. The stakes are high, and the country and the world is watching closely.
That's all for now on World News. I am Pankaj Mishra. Stay tuned with us for more global updates. Good night.